But you have to actually consider the hidden agendas. Like, I can read it. Anyone can read it. It's a public document. But what's behind it and where are they going with it? And that's really where the urgency comes in. And it's basically an order that accelerates the U.S. movement towards a central bank digital currency, so-called CBDC. These are happening all over the world. Beijing already has one. They're past the prototype stage. They kind of rolled that out during the Winter Olympics, last February. Believe it or not, the Bahamas has a digital currency. There are a few other countries that have already gone in that direction. Europe is, the European Central Bank is very far along. The U.S. and the Federal Reserve, because they print the currency, they understood the importance of it. They were watching it, but they were kind of taking their time, like, hey, we're the biggest payment currency, biggest reserve currency in the world, which the dollar is, and we don't want to race into something if it's not thought out. And they were doing a kind of a joint venture R&D program with MIT. Okay, they got some experts there, so that seems to make sense. But all of a sudden, they accelerated it, and they said, no, we got to move fast on this, and we got to catch up. And that's what 14067 was about. So that's kind of what you could get from reading. But what's the hidden agenda? Well, first of all, just a little bit of background on central bank digital currencies. It's still the dollar, so a digital dollar is still a dollar, a digital Chinese yuan is still a yuan, a digital euro is still a euro. So it's not a new currency, but it is a new payment channel, and it is a new form of the currency, if you want to think of it that way, even though it's still the dollar. And it goes hand in hand with getting rid of cash. You say, well, okay, but I still got cash. I can go down to the bank and get a whatever, $10,000 or $100,000 in cash. By the way, that's not easy to do, but try doing it. They'll tell you to come back, make an appointment. They don't have that much money. They got to ship it in. You better show up with like your birth certificate. They'll report you to the Treasury, actually the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network knows the word crime, FinCEN for short, Northern Virginia, and you'll go in a file next to, Ayman al-Zawahiri. So it's not so easy to get your cash, but you can in theory, and that's the alternative. So they have to not only push the digital currency agenda, which we'll talk about in a minute, but they have to get rid of cash, because as long as you have cash, you can do an end run around this. So these two things are coming down the track pretty fast. Now, flipping back to the central bank digital currency, it's not a cryptocurrency. It's not on a blockchain. A blockchain is just a ledger. They've been around since the 80s, no big deal. But this ledger will be maintained by somebody, probably the Federal Reserve, kind of like a bank account. So we might quickly end up in a world where, I have an account at a bank, you guys have accounts at banks. Well, those banks are either members of the Federal Reserve System, or they're smaller banks that are correspondents of bigger banks that are members of the Federal Reserve System, like Bank of America or Wells Fargo. Heaven help you with Wells Fargo. But point being, the banks kind of keep all the books. We might be in a world where you would have an account at the Fed. We'd have it on our iPhone or our Samsung or whatever our mobile phone is. And if I send you money, the Fed takes it out of my account and sends it to your account. End of story. Kind of like a Venmo type of thing with, larger denominations, et cetera. That has implications in terms of disintermediating the banks. Like, if you can do that, which you can technically, who needs banks? The selling point is, well, it's better, faster, cheaper, okay, which it is. So, for example, I go to a bookstore and I buy a book with a credit card. So I get the book. Well, the merchant, the retailer, has this receivable, and so they sell it to what's called a merchant acquirer. Merchant acquirers are finance businesses that buy a whole bunch of receivables from a whole bunch of little retailers or even larger retailers. They then take that bundle of receivables, now we're talking hundreds of millions or more, and they deliver it to MasterCard or Visa, and then they get paid. Obviously, they make a little money on that. MasterCard and Visa then send those receivables to the banks that issue the credit cards, and then the bank sends me a bill and I pay the bill. So think about that. I buy a book, but you get 5 financial intermediaries. You get me, the retailer, the merchant acquirer, MasterCard or Visa, and the issuing bank. And the total fees are, like 2.5%, 3%. So why do we need 5 financial intermediaries with, let's say, 3% fees to buy a book when you can just have an account at the Fed and everything whips through the Fed, fast and easy and inexpensive? And that's all true. That is how it could work if you had this digital dollar. The problem is, but let's assume the banks continue to play a role, because the Fed's job, people talk about, it's the Fed's job, reduce unemployment, squash inflation, now they want a Green New Deal. The Fed's supposed to make sure that nobody lends money to ExxonMobil, even though we're out of oil. Those are like ancillary. The Fed's main job from the beginning, from 1913, really 1907 onward, is to prop up the banks. Like, that's why they're there. So I doubt they'll disintermediate the banks. But either way, you're going to have a faster, cheaper, better system for making payments. But what else? And this is the key, and this is why we're sounding the alarm a little bit on Executive Order 14067. So once it's digital, a couple things. First of all, they know your whereabouts. Now, they already know your whereabouts from your iPhone, unless you turn your iPhone off, and not just turn it off, but put it in what's called a Faraday sac, which is a special woven fabric, a metallic weave that blocks radiation. And by the way, do the same thing with your EasyPass and a bunch of other stuff. But unless you do that, then they know where you are through your iPhone or your Samsung or whatever. So they already know your whereabouts. We have facial recognition software. So they already know a lot, and they know your whereabouts. But now they're going to know what you're buying, right? Because every product has a stock keeping unit code, with a QR scan, digital scan. They're going to know what you're buying. And this digital currency is programmable, meaning they can block certain purchases or not. So let's say you donate money to Elise Stefanik. She's an up-and-coming Republican member of the Republican leadership at an upstate district in New York, or heaven help you if you donate money to Donald Trump. They'll know that, first of all, and you might find that your account's frozen. See, right now, if you work and you're an employee, it's a technical term defined, and you get paid and you get a W-2 at the end of the year, but they withhold it from your payment. They get paid every 2 weeks or whatever. They employer withholds taxes from your wages, and then you get your W-2, file your tax return, you reconcile, and maybe you get a refund, maybe you owe a little bit, but they got the money up front through withholding. But that's not true for independent contractors and professionals, so doctors, lawyers, architects, landscaping store, and anybody who's not a W-2 employee doesn't have withholding. They got to pay their taxes. But what if they could just take it out of your bank account? It's like, yeah, okay, you're a doctor, but you put the money in this bank, and I'm just going to take, some number, 20% out of your bank account every month. And yeah, we'll send you a statement, 1099, file your tax return, and you owe or you get a refund, but no more honor system. In other words, no more waiting till year end. We're going to take it out of your bank account. Or what if, as a form of stimulus, even though it's not stimulus, but they'll call it that, they say you get money in your bank account. Okay, but we're going to put a countdown clock on your bank account. And if you don't spend 10% of it in the next 30 days, we're going to deduct, that much. So in other words, use it or lose it. So now all of a sudden, I worked hard, I made this money, it's in the bank, but you're telling me if I don't spend it, I'm going to lose it anyway. So I might as well go spend it. And of course, the idea is to stimulate the economy. But the point is, the number of things you can do, from surveillance to identifying your political preferences, withholding taxes, account freezes, account seizures, time limitations on your money. Your money's like a countdown clock. It expires after a certain period of time, et cetera. I could go on and on, but you take the point, which is it's not your money anymore. I've always said to people, you put your money in the bank, it's not your money, it's the bank's money, and they'll give it to you if they feel like it. Well, this is that same idea on stilts. And this is like, yeah, and now the government's involved. And then people say to me, oh, that'll never happen. It's already happening. I mean, it's already here. Talk to the Freedom Convoy in Canada. Now, okay, they stalled traffic. They blew the horns at 3 a.m. All Trudeau had to do was come out, say, who are your leaders, meet with them, hear their demands, give them a few, not all. They would all go home, and that would be the end of it. He didn't do that. Chrystia Freeland, who's the deputy prime minister, is a tough cookie, to put it in polite terms. She called the banks in Canada. Now, the difference between Canada and the U.S., they only have 5 big banks. We've got like 5,000 or something. She called the banks, identified the bank accounts of the truckers, and froze all their accounts. She didn't stop there. She then called the crypto exchanges because, I know what cold wallets are, but a lot of people put their money in crypto exchanges, got their names, froze their crypto accounts, seized their trucks. They couldn't feed their family. They were put in jail, held without bail, literally couldn't feed their family in the middle of winter, all because of a non-violent protest. I want to emphasize there was no violence. Yeah, annoying. Yeah. So give them a traffic citation for blowing your horn at 3 a.m, $500 fine, appear in court, whatever. I'm not saying there shouldn't have been any accountability, but being held in jail without bail, where all of your money's been frozen, your assets have been seized, they're non-returnable, and you can't feed your family for what, a non-violent protest? But my point is, and that's an exercise in fascism, of course, but my point is that they did it all through digital banking systems and cryptocurrency systems.